Criminal trial just ahead. MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Rubin was inside the courtroom, and she will join us in just a moment. Also, we're going to go through Trump's interview with Time magazine. The former president was asked about January 6th, abortion policy, and the upcoming election. And it's worth a listen or a read. Plus, we'll bring you the latest out of the Middle East, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's defiant comments on a possible invasion in southern Gaza. Good morning and
MSNBC colleague.
Seth, we love you, Seth. Yes.
I love Seth. No,
Yeah,
he's brilliant. I thought you did a good job.
Thank you.
Were you
Very
nervous?
No, yeah, I've been on it before, and he's so kind. He and his staff are wonderful.
He's so nice.
He's so nice. We talked about the Trump trial. We talked about the campus unrest, which I know we will hear again. And behind the scenes, we expressed worry about the Boston Red Sox.
And did you sleep last night?
I always get a little bit of sleep.
All right, I don't think so.
But only a little.
Also with us, U.S. Special Correspondent for BBC News, Caddy Kay. Always good to have Caddy with us. And we're going to begin this morning with New York City police clearing Columbia University, that building that was seized by protesters. Dozens of officers arrived on campus late last night wearing riot gear. They used a ramp to get inside Hamilton Hall, which was occupied by protesters overnight on Monday. Video shows special police units entering the building through a second-story window. Officers say about 40 people were arrested there, walked out calmly. The university released these images of the damage and vandalism inside Hamilton Hall. You can see overturned chairs and furniture, broken windows, smashed panes of glass. In a statement, the university explains it made the decision to call the police after consulting with security experts and the Board of Trustees. It reads in part, quote, "The decision to reach out to the NYPD was in response to the actions of the protesters, not the cause they are championing. We have made it clear that the life of campus cannot be endlessly interrupted by protesters who violate the rules and the law." The university says it believes the group that broke into the building was led by individuals who are not affiliated with Columbia. We're going to talk about that more. In total, police last night arrested nearly 100 people. They also cleared the encampment that had been up for about 2 weeks, and now the university is asking the NYPD to stay on campus until May 17th, which is just 2 days after Columbia's commencement, trying to make sure, Willie, that everything is safe through graduation day. I just want to point out there, you didn't see people getting dragged out screaming. I think they were all over this, and they outmanned it and outnumbered it and made sure it was a pretty calm event.
Yeah, and Columbia University said, we told you this was going to happen.
Yeah.
We gave you fair warning. Now the NYPD
They went in through the second floor and said, hello,
yeah,
you're going to be leaving now.
Yeah, and they didn't have to use tear gas.
Right.
There were no injuries in this. They cleared it relatively easily for the NYPD. Let's bring in NBC News investigations correspondent Tom Winter. So, Tom, before we talk about the operation, let's talk about how it got to that point. What was the moment at which Columbia said, all right, we need to bring in the NYPD, who had been there for weeks, actually, outside on Broadway and different places, but that they said, we need to send them into the building.
And to be clear, the NYPD was perfectly content to let this keep going. If it was just an encampment and if Columbia called and wanted help, sure, they would show up. But they needed a letter from Columbia inviting them on campus, because if no active crime or threat to life or complaint of crime was being committed, the NYPD just can't stroll onto private property and conduct police operations. It's a violation of at least 2 amendments when we're talking about a protest. So that's something that they need to be careful about. What happened was overnight, this Hamilton Hall incident where somebody snuck into the building, stayed inside of that building, and then let individuals in, and that the NYPD, working with Columbia, was looking at surveillance camera video and said, wait a minute, these are not necessarily all students inside this Hamilton Hall. This presents a problem because these individuals, they say, the NYPD says, have been on our radar for several years. We know them as anarchist types, and the goal of this is not pro-Palestine, not pro-Israel, not pick any other cause that is near and dear to people's hearts. The idea here is that this is an effort to engage police in violence, and we are concerned, this is the NYPD speaking, that they're co-opting this movement and co-opting these students. You could look at the vandalism and say, okay, they overturned a couple of chairs, they overturned a couple of things. I look at some of the images that we saw and some additional images and say this was a way to try to funnel police into certain rooms, to cover up windows so police couldn't see where the individuals were inside of there. That was a primary concern, and I think last night's 6 p.m. press conference sure was aimed at the public. It was really aimed at Columbia University to say, hey, we've got some serious concerns about what's going on inside of there. And they didn't believe, by the way, they were going to stop at that building.
And that was one of the points Columbia made in the statement, that this was led not by students at this point, that this operation inside the building. Is that what the NYPD believes as well? In some ways, it felt like Columbia was letting some students off the hook, maybe, and saying, well, they've just been swept up in a movement led by anarchists with no cause, no ideology. Is that the assessment of the NYPD, that it was more these anarchists than it was students in that building, or do they not know yet?
I think it's still a little unclear because some of the surveillance cameras were actually damaged, so they weren't sure of the entire makeup of what was inside of there. You saw that ramp that was used to get inside of that building that we were looking at, and of course, because everything needs an acronym, it's called the Mobile Adjustable Ramp System. But this is something, you're looking at video of it now, the NYPD has invested in, is a way to get inside of, it's obviously a vertical city, these types of buildings should a standoff occur. And based on some of the images we saw, the opening of this building, or the normal entrance of it, was actually blocked.
So, Tom, we should note that at 9 o'clock, the Mayor Adams and the police commissioner are going to hold a news conference. We should learn a little more about that. Can you talk to us a little bit about, though, shifting to the West Coast? There's UCLA. That scene seemed a little tenser, a little more chaotic. What do we know there?
Yeah, I think based on the pictures and images we've seen over the last several hours, that is absolutely the case. The NYPD, the LAPD has been called to campus there. Obviously, they've got a situation that appears that they might have some counter-protesters that are mixed up in all of this. So that's something that is concerning when you have two groups kind of clashing, and then you also have potential clashes with police. So that's something that we're continuing to report on and get more information. Of course, all of this is we have approximately a dozen, and it's not just East Coast and West Coast and more maybe universities or colleges that are associated with, liberal viewpoints. We've seen protests up and down and across this entire country. I think it does underscore something that law enforcement is acutely aware of here as we continue into 2024. Two things. One, the kids are not all right. The kids that are graduating here on the traditional four-year high school, four-year undergraduate course, their last graduation was held on Zoom.
I know.
Because that was during the pandemic.
We really need a graduation to happen.
And so I think that they're looking for that graduation, but I think, and you all talk about this all the time, the lack of interest, the lack of the students today and younger generations, that's a problem that can last for generations. So we obviously have seen January 6th, where people believe that that was the cause.
Yeah.
I was somewhat heartened last night that both from a police perspective and from a protester perspective, we didn't see widespread chaos and violence at Columbia University. Certainly, the way the NYPD appears to have handled it had helped, but also give credit to the kids that said, hey, look, enough is enough. They're here. They're here to make arrests. And,
and those scenes we were watching from UCLA last night are clearly looking a lot more chaotic and violent than the scenes we were seeing from Columbia, where it does seem that, and I spoke to somebody late last night from the administration at Columbia, and they said, look, we really did feel that we had no choice. And the question is, now what happens? Now what happens? They hope that they can get through the next 2 weeks of school, that they get through graduation, that the students go home, and that they can restore some semblance, of calm on campuses. But everybody's recognizing you've got the conventions coming up this summer, you've got the election coming up in November. The political atmosphere, as you point out, Tom, is very febrile in this country.
It's volatile, for sure.
And I think there is a political fallout here. Certainly those in the White House and the Biden campaign are watching anxiously here. I mean, Donald Trump is stoking this as well. He's blaming this on Biden, saying it's his unrest. And of course, we could set that argument aside as nonsense. But these are scenes of unrest. We already know the Biden campaign has had trouble with young voters who are upset about the situation in Gaza. We're seeing that here. Also, there's fears that these scenes of tumult are turning off like sort of independent swing voters who just like don't want to see chaos, who are upset by this. Now, granted, it's May. We're a long way from the election. If the war has wound down between now and November, this will fade. But it is a concern. And to Caddy's point, graduations come in 2 weeks. President Biden is scheduled to give a couple commencement addresses. There are worries about what could happen at those events.
But Jonathan, it's not so much that, say, for instance, there was a ceasefire tomorrow and the ongoing military operations by Israel or any sort of retaliation by Hamas ended tomorrow. I think the concern in the law enforcement community, and from what I've seen, is that it's another ideology that'll be picked up. Certainly among these anarchist groups, they don't really care what the ideology is, but also among students because of that dissatisfaction, the fact that they believe they have two political candidates that are generations older than them, that are not speaking to them, that the next thing in the jukebox of things, of grievances that they have concerns about, perhaps quite legitimate concerns about, is going to be picked up. And I think that's something we need to pay attention to the rest of the year.
We should say again that, for example, Students for Justice in Palestine, that group was outspoken well before the war. So this isn't necessarily
100%.
about how the war is being prosecuted. It's about the way they feel, sometimes in awful ways, about Israel. So, Tom, what happens next year? We've got an agreement at Brown where the students in the school came to an agreement. They broke up the encampment. They're going to discuss in the fall with the Board of Trustees about divestment from Israel. Yale's encampment has now been broken up. It does seem like, in some places, at least, this has run its course. Still going on in a lot of places, as you pointed out, up and down the coast and across, southern state schools, University of North Carolina, Virginia Tech, they're seeing these scenes. Do law enforcement, do the universities feel like this has some legs as it's going to continue through these graduations?
I mean, I think it's certainly just the nature of colleges and universities. At some point, kids are going to go home. They're going to go to summer jobs. They're going to go to summer internships, whether this has lasting legs. And I think that's what Columbia foresaw in their letter and what they communicated to the city and the New York City Police Department, which is, we would like you here through graduation. They're clearly concerned about, are they going to deal with the same problem again in a week?
Right.
And one of the concerns about some of the anarchist groups, and they're not just in New York City, and they travel around, is that they'll co-opt any sort of movement, and it's like, okay, Columbia shut down, we'll move to pick a university, and or they'll come back to Columbia. Just give it a week. They won't be as strict on security, and so I think that's something that they want to kind of keep a handle on. So at some point, though, I think this runs its course for this semester, but whatever the next thing is going to be the next thing, and I think that's coming, as late as this fall. If
we'll be
sooner.
following that.
Yeah.
NBC News investigation correspondent Tom Winter, thank you very much for jumping in this morning. All right, still ahead on Morning Joe, we'll turn to Donald Trump's hush money trial. The big takeaways from yesterday, and there were a lot. Our next guest says just when the testimony had veered into snooze land, along came Keith Davidson, former lawyer to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. That's next on Morning Joe.
Doug.
Hello, Ghostbusters. It's Doug of Doug and Limu. We help people customize and save hundreds on car insurance with Liberty Mutual. Anyway, we got a bit of a situation here. Sure, I can hold. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, in theaters now.
When you're the leader in disaster cleanup and restoration, how do you make like it never even happened happen? Woo! Yeah, by being prepared for anything.
Serve Pro, like it never even happened.
When you purchase a pair of Bombas socks, tees, or underwear, you also donate one to someone facing homelessness. One purchased equals one donated. 100 million donations and counting. Visit bombas.com and get 20% off your first order.
That. The judge also granted Trump's request to attend his son Barron's high school graduation on May 17th. Testimony then resumed with a total of 4 witnesses taking the stand for prosecution during the day. First up was more from Gary Farrow, the former banker for Michael Cohen. Farrow testified about the creation of a shell company that prosecutors say was used to pay adult film actress Stormy Daniels the $130,000 hush money payment to keep her quiet about an alleged affair with Trump.
But the day's most significant witness was Keith Davidson, who said he was subpoenaed to testify in the case and got himself immunity. Davidson is the former attorney for both Stormy Daniels and former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who also alleges an affair with Trump. Trump has denied any sexual encounters with either of the women. Davidson represented both Daniels and McDougal as they brokered hush money agreements. He testified that he believed the money being given to his clients ultimately was coming from Trump, but he could not recall Cohen specifically saying he was negotiating on Trump's behalf. Prosecutors will continue to question Davidson tomorrow with court in recess today. Let's bring in former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. So, Lisa, Keith Davidson didn't establish that direct line or that intent, not his job to establish intent, but didn't say he remembered Cohen saying this is for Donald Trump. What is the impact of that?
You know, he said that he understood ultimately that the money was going to come from Donald Trump, and that was a very hard-fought admission. Joshua Steinglass, who is the assistant DA leading the questioning, totally skilled trial practitioner, ran into his first really big roadblocks yesterday and trying to get that cleanly from Keith Davidson and trying to establish it was his understanding, not just his assumption. Ultimately, he got that, even after Cohen got frustrated and said, God blanket, I'll just pay it myself. He got Davidson to say, but I understood at the end of the day that money was going to come from Donald Trump. And one of the ways that he understood that was he said, Cohen, part of his identity was that he worked for Donald Trump. He never let you forget it. It was always clear that whatever Cohen was doing, he was doing for Trump, at Trump's behest. He could not make the payment without Trump's knowledge and permission, is the impression that Davidson left us with.
Lisa, they're really making a point to go step by step, witness by witness of every part of this transaction. Is anything at this point surprising you in terms of the detail here and how much they're pinning down exactly how this money ultimately got back to Michael Cohen through Trump?
I think what's surprising me is how painstaking it is, and how much scaffolding they're building around the narrative that we generally understand from Michael Cohen's sort of permeation of our culture, right? Michael Cohen's narrative is one that we're all at this table and many of our viewers are very familiar with. What we didn't know is how many other people touched this transaction, were a part of the conversations around it. For example, the text yesterday between Keith Davidson and Dylan Howard of American Media were incredibly revelatory about how much back and forth went into arranging both of these deals.
Yeah, and Katty, you know, just in our coverage of Trump over the years, Lemire, definitely you would see this. He doesn't email. He covers his tracks. There's no kind of nothing touches him, although this felt a little different because there were a lot of texts and emails around him. And there were more people involved than I expected. I thought it was more going to be just Michael Cohen and then ultimately the people who received the money. But no, this is a scheme with multiple participants.
Yeah, now I was also interested in yesterday in how Davidson said that after the Access Hollywood tape came out, how things suddenly accelerated and changed then. Describe a little bit why that is important for the prosecution.
Well, I mean, it's huge, right? Because after the Access Hollywood tape comes out, there's an understanding that even though the Stormy Daniels story has been in circulation dating back to 2011, and Keith Davidson described how his first interaction with Michael Cohen actually goes back to that story published in 2011 because Cohen was furious it had gotten into the public domain. But, you know, the way in which Katty, those two people interacted, I thought was fascinating. Davidson did not want to be a part of this. And he sort of tried to extricate himself from this. But because of the urgency and the exigency felt by Michael Cohen and the National Enquirer, Keith Davidson gave an aura of just when I thought they were out, they pulled me back in.
So they played the tape yesterday, right? The Access Hollywood.
No, they did not play the Access.
They read it. They read the transcript, or how does it?
They read portions of a transcript from Donald Trump's deposition in the E. Jean Carroll case. You might think
even worse. Okay.
Well, why is that relevant? It's because it contains really foundational admissions like, this is my ex handle.
Right.
I was married to Melania during this period of time. Even getting those really basic admissions from the horse's mouth, so to speak, has been fundamental for prosecutors.
But I guess my point, Jonathan Lemire, is hearing these things read out loud somehow is worse than sometimes seeing them, on tape.
Yeah, extraordinarily cringeworthy, for those, but also potentially impactful, and as Lisa said, laying out an important foundation. Speaking of foundations, let's talk about the gag order and the judge holding Trump in contempt. Now, it's only $9,000. That's
right.
For Donald Trump, not a lot of money. For other people, of course, it would be. But tell us why it's important that the judge did this, right? Is he sending a signal like, look, I'm going to treat you like any other defendant. You violated it. Here, we're going to do this. And forecast for us what that could mean going forward. He's got another hearing tomorrow on this very same issue, more potential violations. Could it really mean ending up with Trump in jail?
I think it could, John, but a lot of things have to go that way. First of all, this guy $1,000 per. It should be a penalty that's meaningful to the person that I'm awarding it against. And in this situation, it doesn't hurt this guy, and yet my hands are tied, right? My two options are jail or $1,000 per violation. But the other thing on which I think the incarceratory penalty hinges has nothing to do with Donald Trump at all. There's a paragraph that I think folks are overlooking where Mershon says it's not lost on me that the guy is the GOP presumptive nominee, and witnesses in this case cannot use the gag order as a sword and a shield. And so my understanding of what counts as a violation in the future will also be contingent on how other people relevant to this matter behave. In other words, Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, if you continue to use the gag order as protection for your own self while taking swipes at him that he can't take at you, that will influence what I understand to be a violation. I'm sensitive to this defense that Todd Blanche has raised, that he is entitled to defend himself in the political domain, and I'm going to take that into consideration.
He wants decorum. He wants people to behave themselves and not mouth off.
Just like anybody else, any other defendant. So, Lisa, you were at the courthouse. Were you in the courtroom, or you were at
You were in the
court
part of the day yesterday.
So you were in the courtroom. So you've expertly given us the substance. Let's talk atmospherics.
Yes.
Donald Trump alleged to have dozed off again a couple of times. Maybe his lids got heavy. I don't know. I can't judge if he was sleeping or not. He certainly was snapping too a couple of times. It's cold in there. He's complained about that a lot, which theoretically keeps you awake. But anyway, tell us about Donald Trump sitting at the table yesterday.
Donald Trump's demeanor changes based on what's going on in the courtroom. I will tell you from where I sat in the overflow room yesterday in the first row, having a big view of a huge screen.
Wow.
Donald Trump appeared to be asleep or resting more often than not, particularly during the first part of the day, where we heard from witnesses who were there as mostly records custodians. On the other hand, where the subject matter is very clearly Donald Trump and what Donald Trump might have been thinking, like we've seen, for example, with Keith Davidson's testimony or the more explosive moments of David Pecker, Donald Trump is sitting there and appraising and watching.
Well, of course, he's interested.
So, I would say he is selectively choosing when to engage, but during the morning in particular, this was not a person who was very interested or maybe enraptured by what was going on.
Did having Eric there make a difference for him, do you think?
No, and I think having Eric there actually was very sad to watch, because this might have been some of the first times that Eric has seen some of these documents, and I and other reporters in the courtroom noticed at times there are monitors that show the documents. Eric Trump was looking up at the documentation through which this deal was done, including emails between Cohen and Davidson, and sort of looking at them interestedly, in particular, the contract between Peggy Peterson and David Dennison, who are the pseudonyms for Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels. Watching Eric Trump watch those documents as just a human being, that struck me.
That's hard.
It was.
All right.
These people are people too.
Yeah. MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, thank you so much for your ongoing coverage.
Thanks, Lisa.
Amazing.
Thank you, guys.
Coming up, House Democrats say they will help save Speaker Mike Johnson's job if he follows Republicans. If fellow Republicans try to oust him. I really messed that up. All right, we'll have the latest from Capitol Hill straight ahead on Morning Joe.
Compared with other chews, one Vervecto chew protects from fleas and ticks for 12 weeks, nearly 3 times longer.
Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures or neurological disorders. Protection that lasts long. Bravo, Brevecto. Bravo.
Whatever your business needs, Vistaprint can print it. Yeah, Vistaprint. Like Rachel needed fun packaging, so Vistaprint designed and printed new stickers, tape, and thank you cards.
Bye.
Corley and Ducky needed to get their brand out there, so they printed new t-shirts, bottles, and caps. And Tasha, well, she needed a total refresh, so Vistaprint made her a new logo, and all that. Because with Vistaprint, the printabilities are endless. Print it all with 25% off for new customers at Vistaprint.com.
Smile, you found it. The feeling of finding psoriasis can't filter out the real you. So go ahead, live unfiltered with the one and only Sotyktu, a once daily pill for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis and the chance at clear or almost clear skin. It's like the feeling of finding you're so ready for your close-up or finding you don't have to hide your skin, just your background. Once daily Sotyktu was proven better, getting more people clearer skin than the leading pill. Don't take if you're allergic to Sotyktu. Serious reactions can occur. Sotyktu can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB. Serious infections, cancers including lymphoma, muscle problems, and changes in certain labs have occurred. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, liver or kidney problems, high triglycerides, or had a vaccine or plan to. Sotyktu is a TYK2 inhibitor. TYK2 is part of the JAK family. It's not known if Sotyktu has the same risks as JAK inhibitors. Find what plaque psoriasis has been hiding. There's only one Sotyktu, so ask for it by name. So clearly you. Sotyktu.
This is it.
Right, yeah, that looks safe. Totally safe.
Breathe.
First timer, huh? Let's pause for the facts. Sure, it looks safe, but like nearly half of all used cars, it's been in an accident. With Carfax.com, you see how accidents impact price, so you don't have to overpay. Unpause.
But no accidents. Endless space.
You're gonna need it.
Wait, twins?
No.
Oh, that was too long of a pause.
Shop with the facts at the all-new Carfax.com.
In here, you can expect to find crystal clear audio, expansive display space, endless entertainment, and more comfort for everyone. But even with all that, we still left room.
Good thing we have Aquasana. It filters out bad stuff, leaving healthy, tasty water. Right, Gilbert?
Now up to 50% off at aquasana.com.
I was seeing this bra all over my Instagram feed. I'm sure you're seeing it too.
This is the most comfortable bra I've ever put on in my life. I love it because, one, it's not underwire. I hate underwire. It smooths out your back. It doesn't give you back fat or back rolls. You could wear this under a t-shirt and it wouldn't leave any marks or bulges. So not only is it super supportive, lifting and smoothing, but you have all that without an underwire and without a ton of padding.
If you're looking at this and it's available, I promise you won't regret it.
Try risk-free. Free returns on all orders.
Is the glass half full? Half empty? With Aquasana, the contaminants you worry about most are removed. Your water's healthier, it's cleaner.
It's gone.
Now up to 50% off at aquasana.com.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can it keep me warm when I'm cold?
Wait, no, I'm always hot.
Sleep Number does that.
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer?
Sleep Number does that.
Can it help us sleep better and better?
Please.
Sleep Number does that. 94% of smart sleepers report better sleep. Save 40% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed or 0% interest for 36 months. Shop now at sleepnumber.com.
Beautiful shot of Capitol Hill. And while we're there at 31 past the hour, welcome back. House Democrats announced yesterday they will save Speaker Mike Johnson should Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene move forward with her threat to oust him. In a joint statement, Democratic leadership said, quote, "At this moment, upon completion of our national security work, the time has come to turn the page on this chapter of pro-Putin Republican obstruction. We will vote to table Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's motion to vacate the chair. If she invokes the motion, it will not succeed." In choosing to table the effort to oust Johnson, Democrats will avoid a direct public vote on the matter. In response, Greene posted on social media, quote, "Mike Johnson is officially the Democrat Speaker of the House. If the Democrats want to elect him Speaker and some Republicans want to support the Democrats' chosen Speaker, I'll give them the chance to do it." In response to Greene, the chair of the House Democratic Caucus, Pete Aguilar, had this to say.
Look, I'm not going to try to get in the head of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't know what goes on in there.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah, I think
that's right.
All agreed. Okay, joining us now, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin. We will ask you not to try and get in her head as well, because we just don't know. But explain to us the dynamic between the House Speaker and the Democrats, and I guess the fine line, the balance, that Democrats who are supporting him, I understand the transaction here, but Mike Johnson has some basic philosophical, constitutional disagreements with the Democrats.
He does, Mika, and yesterday he looked caught off guard when this statement came out. He was in the middle of his Republican press conference, and reporters obviously pressed him on this when the statement came out. He said he didn't do any side deals with Democratic leadership to get to this point. He said he's a conservative, lifelong Republican, and that is going to come into play if and when Marjorie Taylor Greene continues doing this. She's holding a press conference in about 2.5 hours that I plan to attend, where she presumably will talk about her step forward, her plans on this motion to oust Johnson. It's becoming an unpopular one in practice, not only with Democrats, but also with moderate Republicans, many of whom have publicly berated Marjorie Taylor Greene's potential plans. This is something, Mika, that works a lot better for her politically when the threat of this is hanging over Johnson's head, especially now because she can directly link it and connect it and say, look, it's a Republican speaker that will only stay in power if Democrats move to save him. Obviously, that statement from Democratic leadership was a gift to her yesterday, but it's going to be a really, really fine needle for Democrats to thread here, especially if Johnson turns around and puts messaging bills on the floor that put them in a hard spot on abortion, on the border, on immigration. We are months away from the election. So if they're going to do it once, doesn't mean they're going to do it again. Some say Johnson is already weakened by the sheer comment from Democrats that they'll save him. But Mika, this statement may have been a surprise yesterday, but this was a long time coming from Democrats who want to push these hardline Republicans out of power.
Julie, is there a sense on Capitol Hill that Speaker Johnson, in a way, called the bluff of MAGA extremists like Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying, I'm going to push through this Ukraine bill. If you want to oust me, come at me? And now Marjorie Taylor Greene also probably got what she wanted out of it performatively. She's going to have a press conference. She'll raise money. She'll do all the things that she does. But does the speaker feel like his job is now safe and that he may have survived this?
Look, it seems like his job is safe for now. You'll also remember, Willie, he went to Mar-a-Lago to essentially seek former President Trump's blessing. That was a week before he decided to put the Ukraine bill on the floor. Trump stayed out of that. That's notable. If he wants to put his thumb on the scale, he has no problem doing that. And if he doesn't want to say anything, then he kind of opens the floor for Republicans to do whatever they want, to vote how they want for Johnson. Feels like he certainly did call their bluff, like he's in a good spot, but that doesn't mean he's not cornered on a weekly basis by hardline Republicans on the floor trying to pressure him to do what they want him to do. At the same time, I spoke to many of these conservative Republicans, ones who may not be happy with Johnson, but certainly remember what happened back in the fall when Congress was effectively shut for weeks, when they looked like they couldn't get it together. There was a circus behind the scenes, a circus on the floor in which Jeffries, the Democratic leader, ended up getting more votes than Republicans did on the floor for Speaker. That being said, we are even closer to the election now. Republican donors don't want to see this happen again.
So finally, Speaker Johnson seemed to be just giving a word of warning to universities and colleges across the country who are dealing with these protests. They're working on initiative to deal with anti-Semitism on college campuses. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Speaker Johnson yesterday held this press conference with all of these committee chairs he has, right, from all the committees of jurisdiction, from education that's been working this anti-Semitism probe. They've called various college presidents before their committee before, most recently Columbia's president a couple of weeks ago. Now he's sort of directing this whole of government approach. He has Jim Jordan, who's been looking into Hunter Biden, the weaponization of government, now seeming to switch gears and looking into these protests and anti-Semitism as well. They're looking at visas. If any of these students here are protesting are here on visas, they have other committees looking into different aspects of this as well. You hear Democrats not, of course, opposing this effort because so many of them in leadership, Democrats from New York, moderate Democrats, have spoken out against what has turned into anti-Semitism on these campuses when these protests started off to back the humanitarian aid, the need for that in Gaza. They've sort of shifted. Some Democrats saying they've now lost the plot. So Johnson's saying that this is now going to be the focus of the Republican Party in the House. He also most notably criticized what's going on in the other chamber, that's the Democratic-run Senate, with Leader Schumer when he came out on the floor calling for a change of government in Israel. That sort of hasn't left his side in terms of what Republicans have been throwing at him. So it'll be interesting to see what Republicans do here. Certainly Johnson came to Columbia a couple of weeks ago with a show of force from Republicans. He was met by protesters there. But it'll be interesting to see if he fully shifts the Republican House away from these investigations into the president, many of which have been unfounded, and more approaches this anti-Semitism push and investigation as a whole. There will be a vote, by the way, today on a bill condemning and expanding the definition of anti-Semitism, and that's bipartisan.
NBC's Julie Sirkin, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning. We appreciate it. So the White House views a potential ceasefire in Gaza as perhaps the only way to tamp down some of the unrest that we've been seeing on college campuses nationwide. U.S. officials and Arab mediators are pushing Hamas to accept the latest proposal, which calls for the release of 33 hostages in exchange for a 6-week pause in fighting. Israel is reportedly planning to send a delegation to Cairo in the coming days in an effort to secure the deal. It's excruciating.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is there this morning meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem. Meetings will resume later today. This comes a day after the Israeli leader confirmed he plans to move forward with his planned Rafah operation, quote, with or without a deal. The White House has expressed concerns, of course, about that plan as it could undermine efforts to secure the release of hostages. Joining us now, President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass. Richard, good morning. We'll put the Knicks to the side for a moment. It's too painful. And talk about this meeting today, that ongoing between Secretary Blinken and Prime Minister Netanyahu. When Netanyahu comes out yesterday and says, we can meet all you want, you can tell me about this potential ceasefire deal, we don't believe that Hamas is a serious negotiating partner, we're going into Rafah one way or another. So what is Secretary Blinken trying to do today with the Prime Minister?
Look, Prime Minister Netanyahu has to say that, given he's defined success as eliminating Hamas, and his coalition is calling for it, particularly in the aftermath of what is seen as his compromise with Iran. What the administration wants to do is get this deal. The problem is a temporary ceasefire is not what Hamas wants. They want an open-ended ceasefire, which is exactly what Bibi Netanyahu can agree to. So, Willie, I think the administration is going to be pushing the Israelis not simply on the question of whether they go into Rafah, but when and how. Because there's going in and there's going in. Do they go in big? Do they go in immediately? Or do they wait a while and they go in a much more calibrated way? I think that's the real conversation rather than an either-or thing. What the administration wants is a pause.
Administration that if it's going to happen, it kind of needs to happen now. What's your read?
It's tough because, one, we don't know how many hostages are still alive, and Hamas doesn't want to admit that. Hamas has defined an acceptable deal very high. An open-ended ceasefire, the end of Israeli occupation, that is not going to happen. So I'm skeptical. I'd love to be wrong, and it's hard. You've got so many players here, Jonathan. It's really hard to make confident predictions. But I'd say this: if there were a deal, it's not a solution. It buys us a little bit of time. A lot of the basic questions are still there about Rafah, about governance, about the day after, about violence in the West Bank. So, there's such a focus on this. I get it. But no one should delude themselves that this is somehow the answer to what ails the Middle East. It's not.
So, Richard, before his arriving in Israel, of course, Tony Blinken was in Saudi Arabia talking to the Saudis about this idea of a big security deal with the United States. There's interesting reporting coming out of Israel at the moment from Haaretz saying that Bibi Netanyahu's government is waiting on any kind of big security deal with the Americans until after the U.S. election because he doesn't necessarily want to hand Joe Biden a prize. That's kind of different from the reporting that we're getting here in the States. Peter Baker reporting the Times that actually this could happen in the next couple of weeks. What kind of game is Bibi Netanyahu potentially playing here with the White House?
I think,
Do they think they have leverage?
They do.
This?
And I think, there is a preference for Donald Trump. Though in the Time magazine interview, Donald Trump was very tough on Bibi Netanyahu.
Right.
Basically said he abandoned me when we went after Soleimani. He felt let down. So it was one of the...
Well, and he famously congratulated Joe Biden, which he didn't like.
It's interesting. One of the few things Joe Biden and Donald Trump seem to agree on right now is they both dislike Bibi Netanyahu. Who'd have thunk? But yeah, again, there's... Bibi's trying to figure out how does he leverage Hamas, how does he work us, and then with the Saudis, which you just brought up, they're a little bit nervous. Even though MBS is very much in control of the country, he doesn't want to be seen as somehow selling out the Palestinians, because this new generation of Saudis, which has a little bit more space politically, they have awakened to the Palestinian issue. So the Saudis have to get a little bit of cover if they're going to do something with the Israelis. They don't have a totally free hand. The question is, can Bibi Netanyahu, given his government coalition, can he give the Saudis a little bit of the political cover they need with the Palestinians? Not clear to me. That might be the bigger issue.
President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass. Thank you very much. It's good to have you on this morning.
Thank you. And thank you, Willie, for your self-restraint.
No.
Too soon.
Too soon. Much too soon.
Way too soon.
Yeah, just don't do it. Okay. Still ahead, we're going to go
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah,
we'll keep it that way. Ignorance is that's good.
It's better.
So important to them.
About it.
We're going to go through what Donald Trump did and did not say on the topic of abortion during his interview with Time magazine. And Fox News takes action after Hunter Biden threatens the network with a lawsuit. We'll have that update for you coming up on Morning Joe.
Missing out on the things you love because of asthma? Get back to better breathing with Fasenra, an add-on treatment for eosinophilic asthma that is taken once every 8 weeks. Fasenra is not for sudden breathing problems or other eosinophilic conditions. Allergic reactions may occur. Don't stop your asthma treatments without talking with your doctor. Tell your doctor if your asthma worsens. Headache and sore throat may occur. Tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection. Step back out there with Fasenra. Ask your doctor if it's right for you.
You have to feel good. When you feel good, you look good. And when you look good, things happen. My name's Gary. I exercise almost every day. I'm more active than the average 71-year-old man. I started taking Balance of Nature, and I can feel the benefits from it. It's been a little bit of a revolutionary product. I stand behind the product. I stand behind what I say. Balance of Nature, it's a great product for me.
Get 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Call or go to balanceofnature.com and use discount code LOVE.
Want an epic deal? Well, right now at Fabletics, you can get 70% off every single thing. From our best-selling jumpsuits to our iconic leggings and sports bras and everything in between. Shop 70% off at Fabletics.com today.
Rose Sparks, engineered for the spontaneous. A dual-action formula with the active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis. Faster acting and long-lasting. Grab the moment. Get started at ro.co/sparks.
Nexium 24-Hour prevents heartburn acid for twice as long as Pepcid. Get all day and all night heartburn acid prevention with just one pill a day. Choose acid prevention. Choose Nexium.
Before planning the big trip, you were limping thanks to a bad knee. Then you heard about Mako robotic-assisted knee replacement. It starts with a CT scan to pinpoint the problem that becomes a personalized 3D plan to guide your doctor during surgery. Mako can help lead to better outcomes, like less pain and shorter recovery times. The lifetime of a knee implant is limited, and revision surgery may be required. Individual results and recovery times vary. Risks of surgery include pain, infection, heart attack, stroke, death, and other serious risks. Ask your doctor for important safety information. To find a doctor who uses Mako, visit makocan.com.
20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise. That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Connect with a provider today at ro.co/20.
Rise up this morning, smile with Sandals Jamaica sale is now on with rates from $199 per person per night. Visit sandals.com or call 1-800-SANDALS.
This is my coffee shop. We just moved into a bigger space, brought on another employee, and ordered new branded gear for the team. It was so easy. I just chose my products, added our logo, and placed my order. Bring your own team together with custom gear. Get started today at customink.com.
Litter Robot has now solved the litter box problem for over 1 million pet parents around the world. Hi, I'm Brad Baxter, founder of Whisker and Litter Robot. 25 years ago, I inherited 2 cats and an overflowing litter box. I have a background in engineering, so I was thinking of ways I could automate the litter box process. The result was Litter Robot, a fully automatic, self-cleaning litter box. You'll never scoop again, and your cat will always have a clean bed of litter. Join the Whisker family and try Litter Robot today.
We just signed the lease on our 3rd shop. My assistant went to customink.com to get new uniforms with all the locations. He found
You're happy with your lawn, guaranteed. It's time to trust your experts at True Green. Go online to get 50% off your first application.
I predict, Caddy, that October 7th was a seminal day. If we go back in history, let's say it's 25 years from now, we look back, we say, oh, wow, October 7th was a seminal moment. It pushed the envelope. It pushed the pendulum back to something more normal than the allowance of this level of radicalism on a campus, because the administrators want that money, Caddy.
That was a clip from the new podcast, The Rest is Politics, U.S., hosted by Caddy Kay, along with former White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci. Their first episode, released last week, focuses on the protests on college campuses and Trump on trial. And Anthony joins us now. He's also founder and managing partner at Skybridge Capital.
How about this combo?
I like the combo a lot.
This is a good combo.
Confession, this is actually the first time we've met in person.
Oh, really?
Yeah, is that true?
Yeah, on the set of Morning Joe. It's where it all happens.
Wait, stop.
Yeah.
So how do you
That's the beauty of Zoom, right?
That's right.
You do the pod on Zoom.
We do the pod on Zoom. So I did a pod with Anthony around my book.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed because
Confidence
Anthony had
Code.
actually read the book. And,
Isn't it good?
And had smart questions. And I just thought it was...
Well, I love the book.
It would be
but
fun to work together.
I actually gave the book to my daughter.
Exactly.
I told her to read it and just think about it, because you explain so many good things in the book about not overreacting in certain situations and holding yourself together.
And so you learned a lot then.
No, I haven't learned a lot, Mika. That's why I'm on television, Mika. If I had read and followed her book, I could be on
Anthony Scaramucci,
television,
one
perhaps.
of the least confident people I've ever met. Meets the confidence code.
I love it. So tell us not only about the first episode, but what you guys plan to do with this.
Let's let Caddy start, actually, because I think, you know, she's...
Caddy's in charge.
I think Caddy's in charge. I mean, also, she's a better newsreader than me. I still can't read the teleprompter, but go ahead, Caddy.
He shares that with Joe.
Are you the executive producer?
Can't read the teleprompter.
There's clearly a market for for the rest of the world really to understand America. They think they get it, and they don't. And I've always wanted to try and explain what is happening here, not just in terms of the horse race, but in broader political and social issues. And the world is fascinated by what is going on in this country at the moment. And so it was a great opportunity to do that. But for American audiences, there isn't really something there in podcast form that gives them an outsider and an insider take on what's going on.
So I just want to point out to our executive producer, Alex Corson, that the world is fascinated with what is going on here in the U.S. I'm quoting you.
Yeah.
They're watching with bated breath.
They are watching with bated breath, yeah.
Interesting.
Why was Alex skeptical?
Oh, no, they just, whenever I ask the question, what is our standing in the world? I get an eye roll. I'm just going to say.
Not
I do.
For me. Not for me.
I get an eye roll.
I wouldn't say that. So what's great about this? You said inside, outside.
Yeah.
You, of course, were the press secretary for Donald Trump for one Scaramucci. I think that's fair to say, right? That's measurement.
It was 954,000 seconds. I sometimes say that to my therapist. That way it makes it feel like it was longer for me.
That's good. Yeah, whatever makes you feel better.
Exactly.
But despite the short duration, however many seconds it was, you do know the guy and you understand the guy. Donald Trump.
I was on the campaign. I worked for him on the campaign. I knew him prior to that.
And a question that's still, after what has been a decade, that still vexes a lot of people who say, gosh, this seems so clear to me. When you put them side by side, read that Time magazine interview and you go, you want to put that guy back in the White House? But yeah, a lot of people in this country still do.
Can you
it's interesting.
explain?
I don't think that, actually, so I'll take the opposite view. I think that, no. I think they don't necessarily want to put him back in the White House. I think they've got two choices, and there's a lot of people that are thinking, okay, maybe we'll go back to Donald Trump because of some of the things that are going on in the society right now. And so you brought up the clip from the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Those protests helped Donald Trump. They helped Richard Nixon in the 1970s, and they're helping Donald Trump right now, whether you like it or not. And my point about October 7th is maybe we need to get back to the middle. There's a right and wrong. There's a decorum among us. I'm all for free speech. I'm all for appropriate protests on a college campus. But breaking and entering buildings, bringing in people that don't even belong in the college campus setting, quote-unquote anarchists, wrong.
Harassing Jewish students.
Harassing Jewish, anti-Semitism, wrong.
But I
think we
don't
have to call it out now.
That doesn't
as opposed to the
explain why Donald
equivocation.
Trump has a pretty good chance of being re-elected president.
Yeah, well, I think Willie's point is they're going to choose him, but they're in their minds, when I talk to people about Trump, it's a lesser of two evils. Imagine that.
I mean, that's the problem. And also the returning back to right and wrong and rule of law and all those things. Well, it would help if Republicans on Capitol Hill, some of them on the House side, would actually recognize that what happened on January 6th was just as bad as what we're seeing in vandalism across the country or even on a college campus.
Yeah, and in that interview with Time Magazine, Trump, again, downplay what happened on January 6th, to no one's surprise. But speaking of right or wrong, Anthony, we're seeing Trump right now in court. He's stuck. He's powerless. He can't speak. He complains about the air conditioning. He complains about, he seems to have fallen asleep with reckless abandon. Someone who knows him, like, how hard must be this for him? Someone who is always seemingly in control, can say whatever he wants, whenever he wants. Suddenly he can't. What kind of toll do you think this is taking?
I think it's taking a toll, but what I'm surprised about is the lack of investigation around what's going on with him and his family. Because Eric Trump showed up yesterday, but no one's in the court. Family members have said they're not going to go work for him back in the White House. Melania is absent. And I think this plays a bigger part of the story, and it's a bigger toll on him than people imagine. Whether you like him or dislike him, he worked with his family on real estate. He worked with his family on The Apprentice.
Right.
He brought his family into the White House. They are not there with him, and I think that's something that bothers him way more than anybody's letting on. And if the
why are they
Biden
not there?
people,
What's the choice? What's the thinking behind the choice
Well,
not to stand by their
okay,
dad?
so Mika,
They
let me-
stood by him through so much else.
let me put it back to you, Mika. He's on trial for a hush money case, paying a prostitute while his wife was pregnant. That's probably the reason why they're not there. I mean, just put it as simply as that. But one thing he's good at is that he knows how to code things over. He knows how to repeat a lie repeatedly to the point where people say, okay, well, it can't really be that bad. January 6th can't really be that bad. Donald Trump says it's not that bad. And he's got willing accomplices, useful idiots in the Congress that are also saying the same thing, even though on that day they were running for their lives.
You see why this is a good idea?
Yeah,
I like it.
it's gonna go.
It works.
It's gonna go.
Plan.
Yeah,
I like it.
You can listen to new episodes of The Rest is Politics U.S. every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. Former White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci, thank you so much for coming on.
You know how-
Congratulations,
Hey, it's great
you
to
guys.
meet you, by the way.
You know how big Anthony is?
How big is he?
I'm at a Mets game. Walking through the parking lot.
They screaming mooch?
He's got his own parking spot, the ballpark.
Yeah.
Oh, that
You know how
sounds
big
like
I am? I'm
a
sitting on a
scam.
phone book right now, so I can be eye level with the camera. That's how big I am.
Yeah, parking. Does he really?
He's big time. Yeah.
Can we borrow it?
Big time. No.
You can borrow it.
I can?
Mika, you can borrow. You want to use my suite, you just give me dates. And if it's not taken, you can have it.
He means it.
And you can park in the Mooch parking lot.
Wow.
The mooch
Mooch parking spot, not parking lot.
I have a Mets spot.
That's
Didn't
why
need
I
to say
chose.
parking
This is
lot.
why I
Yeah.
chose. Really.
There are
Okay.
benefits.
I don't know
Whatever
what
the
to
sport
think.
is, I'm in.
Willie, it's cute when you see it, though, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a good spot, too, by the way.
Do you drive a smart car? What do you have in there?
Oh, come on.
oh,
I'm an
Okay.
Italian from Long Island.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
guzzling gas.
It's a little
I'm
smart
Italian from
car.
Long Island. What do you,
All right.
got every car imaginable.
Smart car.
I
Coming
like
up,
the Lamborghinis better back then. You can talk about that later.
Mayor Eric Adams will join us live from New York City Hall on the heels of the police response at Columbia University and City College. where dozens of Gaza war protesters were arrested last night. Morning Joe will be right back.
Go beyond the headlines with the new MSNBC app. Read, watch, listen to breaking news and analysis anytime, anywhere. Go beyond the what to understand the why. Download the new MSNBC app now.
When it comes to hair supplements, you just never know.
You see things online, you just don't know if they're going to work.
Is this going to be powerful enough? Am I actually going to see substantial results from it?
My dermatologist recommended Nutrafol, and it's 100% drug-free and clinically tested.
Within 3 months, my hair is fuller.
It's longer, it's thicker.
It was so nice to be noticed for my hair after hiding it for so many years.
Try the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com.
Make your first move with battery power made by Steel. Right now, save $50 on the FSA 57 battery trimmer set. Real Steel. Find yours.
It's time to feed the dogs real food, not highly processed pellets. The Farmer's Dog is fresh food made with whole meat and veggies. It's not dry food. It's not wet food. It's just real food. It's an idea whose time has come.
Judge Marchand is calm, he's methodical, he makes decisions quickly, he's decisive.
They presented it as both a serious case and an open and shut case.
It's not the private acts between two people. It's how did it impact the American voters at large.
There is a group on the Supreme Court who believe their duty is to protect the president.
We heard a lot of hypotheticals from the Supreme Court about what would happen if you put a former president on trial. And America has not fallen apart, so it can be done.
Welcome back. Live look at beautiful New York City. Welcome back to Morning Joe. It's the second hour on this Wednesday, May 1st. Can you guys believe it's May, Barnacle?
It's time. Yes, I can. We're ready.
I'm ready for May. I love spring.
Weather. Yeah,
the flowers will start to bloom. Caddy K is still with us to make things even more perfect.
Oh.
And joining the conversation we have MSNBC contributor Mike Barnacle.